You're looking at images here of nuclear power plants located near water, specifically near rivers in this country. If you tend to think of nuclear power in terms of radioactive leakage, your first thought might be, ugh, that stuff is going to leak into the water. But producing nuclear power involves such intense heat, such enormous temperatures, that reactors need lots and lots of water to cool down their unimaginably hot nuclear fuel. So engineers build nuclear plants near water on purpose, so they can pump that water through the reactor's cooling systems and keep them from overheating. Here's the thing, though, about water. It has a tendency to not stay put. We've been through a lot of crazy deep science together on this show since the nuclear disaster started in Japan. But you do not need to know your fission from your fusion to know that water is liquid and liquid moves. And if you have more water than your river can hold, what you then have is a flood. If you also have a nuclear power plant alongside that river, then what you have is this. Look at that. Fort Calhoun Station, less than 20 miles from Omaha, Nebraska, surrounded by the very much flooded Missouri River, and as photographed by the Associated Press. Local, state, and federal officials say, this might look alarming, but don't worry, everything's fine. They've got an 8-foot rubber wall to keep the water from coming in. And anyway, the plant's been shut down for weeks for refueling. They say do not lose sleep over the idea that the Fort Calhoun nuclear power plant has been sitting 2 feet below the level of the giantly flooded Missouri River. Nebraska has been battling record floods this year along the Missouri from heavy snowpacks and rain. The Fort Calhoun nuclear power plant is actually one of 2 reactors in the flooding region. The other one is the Cooper nuclear station, an hour-and-a-half downriver near Brownville, Nebraska. The Cooper nuclear station is still running at full capacity. But again, local officials say, don't worry, smiles, everyone, smiles. They say, quote, Cooper is at 903 feet elevation, and utility officials said the river would have to climb to 902 feet at Brownville before officials would shut down the plant. So there's nothing to worry about until you're at 902 feet. Right now, the river is at 900 feet. So they say, don't worry. We're at 900 feet, nothing to worry about till we're at 902 feet, and we are sure keeping a close eye on
Continues in eastern China today. Zhejiang province is especially hard hit. New aerial footage shows the extent of the destruction.
This is Xin'anjiang Reservoir in East China's Zhejiang province, after days of devastating floods. The images were shot on Wednesday from an ultralight plane. In Xiaya Township, some villages and farmland have been submerged by floodwater. Located in a bend of Xin'anjiang River, the low-lying areas of Xiaya have been flooded by water released from the Xin'anjiang Reservoir. The water releases were intended to reduce the risk of the reservoir overflowing and to reduce flooding downstream. This patrol ship is monitoring the situation in and around Xiaya Township. An island in the river is almost completely submerged. The walkways of a flood control project and the first floor of a hotel on the island are also underwater.
Recording a public meeting? You cannot stop a report. Sir, you can't arrest me for reporting.
I can arrest you for not obeying an order.
I'm a reporter. This is a public meeting. This is a public meeting. Sir, this is a public meeting.
Last chance.
Sir, this is a public meeting.
Last chance.
I'm a reporter.
Stand up.
It was stunning video posted on the internet for all to see, and it came with a charge that police masqueraded as protesters at this week's Montebello summit to incite violence. Tonight, an equally stunning admission from Quebec's provincial police. Susan Bonner reports.
These 3 guys are cops, everybody!
Busted. 3 Quebec provincial police officers, identities masked, one carrying a huge rock,
Hey, put the rock down!
nabbed for infiltrating a peaceful protest at Montebello. The tip-off came from a union leader who noticed riot police standing by despite the obvious weapon. He accused the men of being undercover cops trying to provoke a riot and end the protest. The men were removed but never charged. After 2 days of questions, the Sûreté du Québec issued a news release late today confirming, yes, the men are police officers, but denying they were agents provocateurs, claiming they were sent in to identify and stop trouble. They say the police refused to throw stones, committed no crime, and were there to maintain order and security.
There's a serious issue about proper police conduct here.
Criminal lawyer Lawrence Greenspan has defended protesters for decades. He says it's time for politicians to act.
I think the people that represent us in the legislature should be looking at some form of legislation that says, wait a second, this is not a proper use of police resources, and we should be setting guidelines.
Activists have argued for years that police try to thwart their legal right to protest by trying to incite aggression so they can move in and take protesters away. They say they do it even when demonstrators gather in a designated area, as these mostly unionists were in Montebello. And they say politicians tacitly endorse it.
This is the face of it, where people can't even ask a question without having to face these kinds of goons. It's time that all of the secrecy and backroom deals end.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Friday, June 24th, 2011. I'm Darko. This is part 3, the final part for today, everyone. Thank you for joining me. My website is www.ggnonline.com. That's ggnonline.com. And sorry about not getting these videos up, sooner. When I put one up, it usually sometimes takes a while to get the next one up. And to be honest with you, it gets harder as I do more videos. I get to the last video, it gets harder and harder for whatever reason. Probably maybe because I'm covering more articles. But either way, the internet just starts messing up. The computer starts messing up, and so I'm just constantly fighting technical issues here. So just bear with me, please. Okay, so we have restaurant blogger jailed for criticizing salty noodles. A court in Taiwan has jailed a woman for 30 days after she complained her noodles were too salty, and she got hit with a defamation lawsuit. Okay, next up we have here, Applied DNA Sciences successfully marks mission-critical microchips for the Department of Defense. Stellar results lead to immediate marking program with Defense Logistics Agency. So you can go in there and check that out. Next up is now Apple wants to block iPhone users from filming live events with their smartphone. Holding up an iPhone will trigger an infrared sensor installed at the venue. These instruct the device to shut down its camera. Links will be posted. Acoustic cloaking device shields objects from sound. Scientists have shown off a cloaking device that makes objects invisible to sound waves. Next up, then, we have Google's page. Schmidt may be subpoenaed by Senate antitrust probers. And moving on here, we're going to cover this G20, G8 summit opponents infiltrated by police. Newly released G20 summit documents reveal that RCMP and various Ontario police forces spent several months infiltrating anti-war, anti-globalization, and anarchist groups with the use of undercover officers ahead of last June's summits in Huntsville and Toronto, and they do that everywhere, and they get caught, and they'll just walk away from the group after they get punked out and called out. Vancouver police defend riot staffing, and it says here that Vancouver police are defending the number of officers on the street during last week's rioting was about the same during the gold medal hockey game. So all those police officers, 5,000 officers, and they still had these, quote, riots. Why? Well, because the police were dressed up as, no, not anarchists this time, but actual fans. So just adapt and overcome, I guess, with them. Editorial was the Fast and Furious, a gun control plot. It says, rather than a botched attempt to catch criminals, was the ATF program actually an attempt to advance gun control efforts by an administration that has blamed Mexican violence on easy access to U.S. weapons? Then we have Mexico arrest La Familia, a drug cartel leader who's also a BATF gun runner. And then next up, the Knights Templar, Mexico's newest narco-evangelicals have arrived. So it's kind of an interesting name that they chose. I honestly think that the actual government, Mexican government, are pretty much the drug cartels. And so when they have the war on drugs in Mexico, they're actually taking out competition and smaller unauthorized dealers. So we also know for a fact that some of these big corporate banks that you may know are also laundering drug money as well. And they say that they don't do it purposely, obviously. But they have something to do that, to prevent that, and that's what they have. They have their own fraud department, and so they basically they inspect and regulate and oversee themselves. Arizona wildfires blamed on Mexican drug smugglers, and then we have Mexicans want peace, not war on drugs. Government's war on organized crime has spawned an unprecedented peace movement. And look at this, 4 decades of drug war. Tyranny may come to an end with Ron Paul's new effort to legalize marijuana. Check that out. Man contends Illinois jail denied him HIV drugs. Then next up we have burglar knifed to death by homeowner was on bail for another suspected burglary. And I just saw that law-abiding citizen movie. That movie's really good. Unfortunately, the good guy is actually the bad guy. And that's how you know it's real propaganda, real good programming. Surprise TSA is searching your car, subway, ferry bus, and plane. We have Sonny Shu murdered for investigating New York foreclosure judge Joseph Golia. And then we have New York cop illegally trespasses private property, arrests woman for filming suspicious traffic stop. Man's pimping case tossed after officer made up evidence, just like that movie Insomnia with Al Pacino, basically saying just fabricate things, right? Fabricate evidence. Make it up if you don't have any evidence. Gunman says police overreacted to Maryland siege. That's right, he had toy guns, and they had a SWAT team on him. Michigan considers banning TSA groping and molestation. Then government surplus stores now selling personal items TSA steals from passengers. From the Activist Post, G20 agree on agricultural market measures, says U.S. official. Then wildlife refuges to be planted with GMO crops. Then next up we have, besides some survey here, does the new White House Rural Council equal UN's Agenda 21? We'll go check it out and find out. Pennsylvania County rejects Agenda 21, and G20 wants stricter regulations on commodity markets. And then next up, UN climate propaganda exposed, industry lobbyists behind scientific claims in IPCC. It's almost like Alcoa, the aluminum company of America, funding the research. For what? To dump fluoride in the drinking water. Climate debate hysterical, says Chief, and it says that those who disagree with the evidence of supporting human-induced global warming do not deserve equal weight. China will strive to meet emission reduction targets, says officials, so they believe in it. Poland blocks EU move for deeper CO2 cuts, and everybody calls them stupid, dumb Poles, right? Well, I think they're a little bit smarter than your average bear. And that was just another article coming from the BBC. Costs will stop rural drivers visiting family. Nearly 1/3 of drivers in rural areas say they would be forced to stop visiting family and friends if the cost of fuel continued to rise, says a survey. Then jellyfish back off Japan nuclear plant. That's right, they were surrounding the nuclear plant. And then China's actually been blamed for Japan's giant jellyfish invasion, which is kind of interesting. Makes you wonder if it's just economic warfare. Chinese find 55-foot sea monster. Then radioactive dust from Fukushima plant hits North America soon after meltdown, says researchers. And then TEPCO stop melt-through fuel from contaminating groundwater will cost too much and hurt company stock price. Henry Kissinger says China won't be the next superpower, and 4 sentenced to prison in tainted milk case in North China. Then we have Haitians hunker down in transitional shelters, so they're still in shelters, and Haiti cholera cases on the rise, says WHO. 78% of Pakistani children with polio were given polio vaccines, so go figure it. And look at this, UNICEF supported Pakistan in the floods by what? Giving 9 million children vaccines. Vaccines and foreign aid, a shot in the arm that will be felt all over the world. Britain's vaccine pledge yesterday will save lives and also kill them, but also help kill off the diseases that threaten them, right? Now they're talking about kill them. Okay, next up we have inches away from being America's Fukushima nuclear plant, dangerously close to being engulfed by Missouri River, and then water filling 25 homes in Manoa, North Dakota as rivers rise. And another study says fluoride can damage the brain, avoid use in children. Then we have Arizona death maybe linked to European E. coli, MSG linked with obesity. Canada and others block asbestos from UN hazardous lists. And then we have this, fertility management. Al Gore calls on women to have fewer children to curb population. And the Canadian government has been calling thousands of geese because they've been getting in the way of airplanes. This is GGN. I'm Darko. Thank you.